Hello and welcome everyone. We're thrilled to have you join us today for a webinar where our experts will discuss how to maximize the value of teamwork in retail and e-commerce. This webinar is brought to you by eCore. We are a technology consulting partner dedicated to driving digital innovation and business transformation. With our global experience across key industries and cutting-edge technologies, we assist both fast-growing and established companies in creating innovative digital products, modernizing technology platforms, and enhancing the efficiency of their digital operations. We're here to partner with you on your journey to evolve and go beyond. Now, I'll pass it over to Dan Texera, who will be your host for this webinar, to start the presentations. Dan, take it away.
Thank you very much, Julia, and welcome everybody to the webinar. We're extremely excited to be showcasing our capability and how we've been aiding retail clients throughout the years. As a reminder, eCore is celebrating its 25th anniversary this year, 25 years of showing value to our clients through the experiences which we have. And it's my pleasure today to be here with Andrea and Mariangela to showcase some of those stories, some of the knowledge that we bring to our clients. Andrea, we'll start with you. Do you mind introducing yourself a little bit?
Nope. Hey everyone, my name is Andrea. I've been working with eCore as a product owner since 2021. I've been working with in the industry first as a software developer, but then transitioning over to the product owner space. And I've been assisting eCore with several projects already. And I'm here to try to bring a more technical view and share some cases with you. Go next, Mariangela.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mariangela. I've been working as a project manager for the last 14 years, leading projects in both agile and traditional methodologies. And at eCore, I am a service delivery leader, and I manage projects at our clients, and also I lead the development teams to implement solutions for our clients. And today I'm here to talk about some of these challenges we had with our customers, especially regarding the project management and the team challenges we've had. So I'll pass over to Dan to talk about the solutions and these customers we had.
Excellent. Thank you. And we'll get some more insight from them. What we hope to do in the beginning here is build out a little bit of understanding of how do we see how to build better products within the retail space, the understanding of the kind of structure for success for e-commerce organizations, and then really go into some of the success stories which we see. The key that we look at is what we've been studying and kind of studying and also seeing what's coming out from different industries and different examples that we've seen is this connection of flow alignment around value between the goals that an organization sets, the technology that helps to enable those goals, and the setup of the teams that are set up to then enable those technologies and achieve those goals. So kind of a reoccurring flow that occurs in. And what we oftentimes find is that there's either a problem in the team setup, the technology enablement, or the misalignment of those business objectives. And the euphoria that we find is when there is a clear alignment of the goal that's being oriented, the technology enabling it, and the teams being able to support it. We're going to go through several examples in a bit around how we see this possibly collapsing or where it's been accelerated in the retail space. The way that we look at assessing this is through first making sure that we're clear upon the goals that we're looking to achieve. Technology is hitting us faster than ever before. And so we see more and more people coming out as an example and looking at how do I adopt generative AI? Maybe is not the question asked. The first question is to ask is, what problems are you facing in that retail space, in the e-commerce space? Are you not getting the clicks that you want? Are things being left in your shopping cart? Is the supply chain coming into the retail space not optimized to the degree that we wanted to? Are you not getting that omni-channel approach? Then looking at and understanding where are you from a current state perspective. And we see that at this point, the way that technology has moved so fast, a lot of our e-commerce clients are in a mode of a severe amount of technical debt. They grew up in the early ages of technology and now are legacied out in some sort of ways. So that aspect of bringing new technology could somewhat be limited in how they're working now, and it could need some level of modern day technology or connection with APIs and other systems that's coming in. Then it's leveraging the technology that fits and making sure that you're taking the baby steps or the staggered steps to get there, that you're not just coming in and looking to revamp everything all at once, but iterative development that shows that value quicker. And we know, as some of the examples that we'll provide, is that thinking of this from a project-based perspective does not get you the results that you want. It only gives you siloed pieces of something that do not connect together. So this aspect of thinking of a product-based transformation, product-based changes is key. And in the retail space, when we talk about products, we're talking about search as a product. We're talking about possibly shopping cart as a product, and then the end-to-end experience as a product as well. So there's a multifaceted piece there, but them all coming together gets you your solutions. By doing all of this, you empower teams. And we'll talk about the different aspects of team topology to make sure that the right team is there to support, but the key is to have those teams in play to become empowered. So what do we see? There's this, in the retail space, some real challenges that we're facing. Some of this is the balance of accuracy and security, of performance and security, and how does that balance through? Are there the proper safeguards to make sure that the customer's data is in play? When I jump onto my favorite site to buy something, I want to have the products, the experience that looks exactly like me, and that enables me to be happier, to click and buy very quickly. And so that ability to adapt customer demands, customer preferences, the search optimizations and the personalization is more critical than ever before. And then service levels now with AI are accelerated. And so I just want a top-notch experience, whether I'm in the store, whether I'm on a remote device, or whether I'm on my laptop. It has to be seamless throughout. And so these are some of the kind of problems that we're seeing faced. I imagine some of you are seeing that. Andre, can you talk us through conceptually, how does some of the architecture get enabled in order to make this live?
Yeah, sure, Nate. So like Dan mentioned, it's very important that teams are aligned across the company to deliver the right results, right? And that often becomes a challenge when companies don't consider the right architecture for what they're facing, right? This sometimes happens because that architecture develops throughout time and it's not really planned out. It's just kind of happening. Whenever new things come, they are integrated into it. Here's an example that we've come up, right? Again, naturally, depending on your business, this might look different from what your business would look, right? There might be more channels, there might be more layers to it, but this works on as an example of what we would suggest, right? As you can see, it leverages microservices to have like distinct areas responsible for each key component, right? Like Dan mentioned, and communicating among themselves whenever needed, right? Here we have an example of a deeper vision of such a diagram, right? This is more of a flow about the processes and the steps that your customer would have as part of his experience, right? This I won't probably go into too much detail because, again, this is something that would look mostly different depending on your business. This doesn't really, it wouldn't add much value for us to discuss the hypotheticals, right? I think it makes more sense for us to bring in more cases about it. But this kind of diagram allows us to have a better view of what are the key steps and where these teams would be important and would connect, right?
And I think it's just key to help us understand the aspects of team topology, and where the team plays come into play. So a couple examples that we have here. Just first, a refresh on the concept of team topologies. This is a concept of teams working together along a value stream, whether that's in an agile release train, in a team of teams, in Scrum at scale, whatever framework you'd like to execute upon. The key aspect is that no team in most organizations, and especially in the retail space, can work alone. There's connected tissues of the teams working together to get the ultimate goal out. And so you have streamlined teams. These are teams that could directly align to value. And these are teams that can release an enhancement or go right towards the customer. So an example of this here is the content or promotions or a regional brand team. A team that is directly impacting the way the customer orients itself. That team, though, can't control everything, and there's multifacets to what the team can add to it. So we do have concepts of a complicated system team. This is a team that provides specialists to reduce the cognitive load. On the streamlined aligned team, I can't have all of my knowledge there. I can't have experts in everything. And so in things like a search engine team, which is looking to optimize upon particular aspects of how the customer interacts and finds the products, the algorithms, the technology there may need to be specialized. This is where that complicated system teams come into play. Platform teams are organized around development. So this could be the aspects of moving into your cloud services. We've seen teams that are adopting DevOps platforms here. We've seen support mechanism teams that have been in these types of teams as well. And then we have our enabling team. This is the team that's supporting the autonomy to the value stream aligned team and also to your complicated system team. A great example of this in the e-commerce space is the people that are providing the data and analytics to move things forward and to push the momentum of getting that data to then be empowered to that value stream team. The key here again is aligning these teams so that they could be successful and understanding what each of these pieces come together to align then along a product. We're going to switch now from the presentation aspect to actually having a little more of a conversation and telling a little bit of the stories that we have at e-commerce. Now, at eCore for e-commerce, too many E's. But I want to start with kind of thinking about security. There is a lot of demand to an e-commerce platform today, but the way that you quickly get to no results at all or get hindered from a business perspective is the aspects of placing security. Andrea, can you tell me a little bit about some stories we have around how we've supported clients with security?
Sure then. I'm going to talk a little bit about PMD, right? So that's that's payment method distribution, and it's a strategy that goes about making sure that your data, your customer's data is secure, right? And as lightweight as possible on the company, right? So what payment method distribution is a strategy, right, for where a company partners with a tokenizer, right? A tokenizer is a service provider who stores data, in this case, credit card data, for companies. And in exchange for that, they send out a token, right? So that's basically a key that the company can then, at a later moment, when necessary, use to retrieve that credit card information. So basically, I will submit my my information to my credit card information to the company. The company saves that inside the tokenizer and gets a token. That token is stored alongside my data inside there, so in my profile data. And then whenever I want to make a purchase, and the company just sends out the token saying we need to make the purchase, and the credit card information is made available, right? why is that important? Why is that good, right? So the reason is because in order for you to handle, it's already costly, right? But in order for you to store credit card information, that creates what we call the PCI burden, right? PCI is payment card industry information, right? And the idea is that whenever you're handling this kind of data, it needs to be extremely secure, right? And there are standards. There's the PCI DSS standard. So that's the payment card industry data security standard, which needs to be kept into place in order for you to manage this kind of data. And what security normally means is it's costly. It needs redundancy. It needs security teams. It needs a lot of things, right, in order to be kept up to date. And besides the cost associated with maintaining the information, maintaining this kind of information on site also means risk, right? In case of a data breach, or in case an attacker gets access to your infrastructure, that information could be compromised. And whenever credit card information is compromised, it's not just the credit card information that's the problem, right? The problem becomes a PR issue, right? The trust in your company plummets, right? It's not something that any company would want to risk, right? So even if it might be more costly to store this elsewhere than it would be to store this inside, the risk mitigation factor might justify you wanting to move these things out, because first, you reduce complexity. You don't have to keep as many hyper-secure environments inside your space. And second, you mitigate the risk, because now you have a provider whose specialty is security. And again, those tokens are not like an encrypted version of the credit card. That's a completely unrelated piece of information that's used as a key, right? The analogy that perhaps we could go into about this is that it's almost like a gym locker, right? So you walk into there, you put your stuff in the locker, you lock, and you carry out the key, right? Now, that key is not the things you put in there. It's just a key that allows you to access it. In this scenario, there's a couple additional steps, because there's our company keys associated. So just the token doesn't allow an attacker to access that data with the tokenizer provider, right?
That's awesome.
But, yeah.
I think
And what we did, sorry, Dan, just to finalize, right? What we did to this specific client was to develop this system, right? And integrate that with both their infrastructure. So that's their applications that were processing this, and their suppliers, right? So there was work on both the code development of these systems, integrating that with internal applications, onboarding that with internal applications, and integrating it and testing with the suppliers, right?
Critical. Apologize for interrupting, but critical. And I think one of the critical spaces that you're really teasing out is there's a business priority. To go back to the slides we had, there's a business priority of security and making sure that we don't end up on the news for anything bad. There's then the technology decision that says, hey, this is really more complex than we have the capability to possibly work with. And we would rather have our most skilled people maybe work on the aspects of understanding the customer, the personas, all of that such, and creating the fancy front end, and then really creating that complicated system team that we talked about earlier, and having that supplier be that complicated system team, and having them take care of that security aspect that we don't feel like we have to grow internally. And then as a e-com company, we offer our best skill to the front end. It's brilliant. Governance has to be a play in this, though, and some sort of policies and governance. Can you talk about how we've done some of that?
Yeah, sure. So another project with a different client, right? So in this one, we talked a little more about the technical side, how to implement something to mitigate risk, right? But there are times in which you can't just mitigate risk. Sometimes you have to keep that information on site. Even if you don't, maintaining PCI DSS certification is also important, even if you're just handling the information and not storing it locally, right? So sometimes you might have to actually go through this and have the processes, right? And what is PCI DSS, right? So it's the standard for handling credit card data, right, and information. Why is it important? It's basically because even though it's not enforced by law, it is often a requirement for major credit card companies to interact with your business, right? So if you do not meet these standards, you might risk not getting business with these credit card companies, right? So it might impact your bottom line in the end, right? And how did we assist a client with this specific scenario? Through the optimization of governance, right? So we leveraged the Atlassian stack to streamline and standardize the process of getting these certifications and audits in place, right? So a key requirement for that is often that this process becomes flexible while being robust, right? And scalable, so that the companies can grow and continue to maintain these certifications, right?
That's a critical aspect. Now, all I heard there in my lean mindset, I heard a lot of governance, all that, but in my lean mindset, all I heard was slow, handoff, and possibly some waste. So a part of the platform is, a part of what we want to do in e-commerce is have optimal performance while we have these security places in play. What are some things we could do to make sure that we're optimally performing on our site as well?
Yeah, I do have a case that we can talk about quickly about it, which is about some solution we did for caching, right? So that's where things get speedy, right? Now, why is caching important? One might ask, right? Basically, how optimized your caching solution is determines how fast and how accurate the information you're displaying to your customers is, right? So if you're too slow, you impact a customer experience on your website. He might get distracted. He might lose focus on it. If you're inaccurate, you not only impact the customer experience because it's inaccurate, but you might drive abandonment, right? And when I say inaccurate, it's basically, okay, what if I search for a product and in the first listings, there's saying that the products range from $8 up. But when I get into the product, it's $16 and above. And that's that. You get that moment of, well, I had my expectations set on 8. Now I have twice as much as that, right? And that's a challenging thing because whenever we go into caching, and we need to strike a balance between those things, right? How much information can we keep closer at base so we don't have to ask our suppliers at each time? And how long can we keep that information before it starts becoming stale, right? Before it starts becoming outdated. And that is tremendously tricky things to do. Fine-tuning this, and that's what we did for this specific client. It was fine-tuning their caching solution to try to get as much of it with as least cost, right? So we had a large reduction in the number of calls being made to the suppliers in this specific project, right? While maintaining the cache fresh, right? And this is challenging because, again, there's no silver bullet to this. It requires extensive analysis, and it requires a specific analysis of the characteristics of the business you're running, right? So if you're selling Christmas trees, your business is going to look one way. If you're selling cars, it's going to look a completely different way, right? So there needs to be not only the technical knowledge of how to implement these things, but also a deep connection and a deep conversation with the business teams inside the client, right? To understand these nuances and properly fine-tune it up and down in order to get as much performance as you can with as little cost as you can, right? And one of the things that's interesting here is that we come to this from like two perspectives, right? But we joined it to try to make it faster. But during the process, we kind of came up with the question of, okay, how can we evolve this, right? And one of the things that came up was to introduce in this process data collection points, so that the process, the decisions that were being made could be thrown into a data lake and could be used to generate machine learning and could be used to generate intelligence out of it so that decisions could be made, right? So we didn't implement the complete set of taking that back, right? But we drove them towards this idea of making it so that the information we're using to make these changes can be reused and can be driven to optimize as much as we can on performance side, right? And probably the next step would be to implement the other way back, right? So to use this data to make these changes real time, dynamically, right?
Yeah, that's where analytics comes into play. That's where understanding the full supply chain, your omni-channel, all that pieces. So feedback now, every person has an opinion. Some of them are accurate, some of them are crazy, some of them are valuable to the platform, some of them are not. Marianza, can you tell me, I know we did this really, one of the case studies we were preparing for this that I enjoyed the most was this one around managing feedback to be effective. Can you talk a little bit about the outcomes you were trying to achieve?
Yeah, sure. So we helped also a client of Vicor to implement a solution for customer feedback. And the problem that the client had was that they had this legacy application, which made it difficult to change every survey that they had. So if they wanted to make a change, for example, in the questions they wanted to make to the customers, or if they wanted to add a new customer survey, they would have to ask a development team to implement a new one. So they if they had this business problem, it would always become a technical problem. So what we did was to help them to make the user have more flexibility to manage those surveys, and they would be able to create through a user interface. They would be able to create new surveys or change the surveys that they had, and this way they would have more autonomy to this data. So I think Andrea also can speak to about the technical parts of this implementation. Andrea, you can go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Maria. Yeah, so just like Maria mentioned, right, we joined in to try to assist them in getting, in modernizing, right, their feedback loop with their customers, right? And basically what we implemented was an admin tool, right, that allowed them to create, update, review the results for, retire their surveys, right? So instead of having those hard-coded and needing development teams to implement those whenever they needed them, this solution would allow them to have a faster turnaround rate. So if there was a seasonal thing that they needed to collect opinions on, they could just include it and roll it out. One of the things that we did, what was really interesting and that drives a lot of conversations, was versioning, right? To allow them to have a survey that's already ongoing, right? The customers are receiving this right now, but to also have, in the meantime, a next version for it already in internal approval, so that it could be evaluated, it could be reviewed on their side, right, internally, and whenever they were comfortable with it, whenever they were ready to roll that out to the public, they would just click a button and it would overtake the original one, and the data would be entirely linked, right? So the responses for the previous one, the responses for the new one would be kind of together, so it could be all leveraged in the same manners, right? So it was a really complex project to develop, right? And after getting the responses from the customers, one of the things that's important is that we capture that response and we added that to a topic structure, so that any team, any application team, any data team inside the client's infrastructure and ecosystem could leverage that data, right? So that data would flow to any teams that had like a stake in it, right? So if this is feedback about a specific product, then the product teams could reach it in order to, I don't know, update their reviews page, add the comments the user added. If this was a negative comment, perhaps this could go to a cares space, so that an agent could reach out to a customer to say, hey, we realize you had a negative experience here. Perhaps we want to send them a voucher or something like that, right? So all those things would be achievable with this structure of the topic, right? And one of the perhaps funny things is that once this was ready, and once this was ready to roll out, and they started trying to roll this out to production, they started realizing that more of their systems would need to be adapted in order to adjust to these changes, right? To this new flow of feedback. And so seeing as we had done a good work with them on implementing this system, they brought us along to implement other systems, in systems such as user-provided content reviewing, so that the crazy comments that Dan mentioned don't really show up in your web page, right? Also for storing these things in a database, making sure that this is accessible to the front end, right? So we basically touched on both the beginning, where we're reaching out to the customer, how to collect that information, how to manage it, up until that information being shown on a web page, right? And I think we can jump over to Mariangela, perhaps, to tell a little bit about the challenges that we faced on rolling out all this structure, right?
Yeah, so eCore was hired in a project level. So first we were hired to implement the new customer feedback survey and this new application. Then we were hired to implement this review tool application. So we built these two applications to the customer. And then after we were ready to launch these two applications in production, we realized that the flow was much more than these two applications. So there were other teams and other applications that were relying on these applications on the customer feedback flow. And unless we had all of them ready with these changes that we implemented, we couldn't put these two applications in production. We had to do everything, all the applications at the same time. So what we did as a project manager, I was helping this client to gather all these teams that had applications in this flow and work together with them to prioritize these changes to fill this gap that they had to cover, and include these changes in their development flow. So they had to prioritize this work and include in their product backlog flow, and then they would implement exactly the changes. So these process that we started after we already had the two first applications ready to go to production, it took us around 3 quarters more to get everybody ready and put everything into production at once. So if we had been participating in the project management since the beginning, I think we could have helped them better to before we started all the developments, we could have engaged all the teams up front and make them understand that they had this goal to have a new customer feedback solution, and everybody would start their development flow at the same time, and so they could be ready more or less at the same time. So we would anticipate all these developments and making more efficient and agile way, so that these objectives and also the planning would be shared by all those teams that participated. So I think that would be much more efficient than what we did all the way around.
Wonderful, wonderful lessons learned. I bring it back to this slide, which is becoming our kind of go-to on understanding some problems in the case. Rams, if I recap the lesson learned that you had there, the misalignment of or diversification of different goals at the top implemented silo solutions and pushed towards independent teams, which then couldn't come together to retrieve that value to the customer. And the key here is understanding and aligning on all the investments and those goals connected together, making sure that you have that top class enablement technology that Andre spoke about to pull those solutions together and then build it out and empower it to the individual teams. It becomes incredibly easier to take a step back and look at problems in this way and then move it forward. This, we think, is especially important in the examples of e-commerce, where there's tons of pressures from a supply chain aspect, from the push towards omni-channels, from the influencing of customers out external, and the ability to pivot quickly the use of understanding which teams need to do what technology is there, actually will enable an organization to take some of the impacts that are happening very quickly, quicker than we've ever seen before, and drive value home. So that's kind of the linchpin of what we're talking about here. These stories have been tremendous. I want to take a second to just to thank both of you for being a part of the conversation today. We have many more stories to go through, but we only have time for these today. Hopefully people get some lessons learned that are listening in. But Julia, I want to bring you back in, and there may be some questions and answers from the audience that we could take.
Sure, great insights, everyone. Thanks for sharing your valuable knowledge. We actually have a question here for Andrea. How do you see the future of technology in the retail industry?
Hey, Julia, thanks. I think then this kind of ties into that which we were talking about when we were talking about caching, right, and performance, which is asking the question of how can we leverage these new technologies, right? And I think this also ties in with what Dan was talking about. When we look at new technology, we think, oh, how can we bring this in, right? But I think the question should go the other way around, right? It should be, what are the problems we have and how can we leverage these new technologies to solve those problems, right? And I think this is exactly what happened here, right? So it was not, let's try to plug machine learning, which is like a hype new technology, into this, so that, because, right, it is, oh, by looking at the data we have, by looking at the work we did, and exploring the possibilities of how to make it even better, how to make it more dynamic, the question arose, is it not perhaps the case to leverage machine learning and other data analytic technologies to make this even better and to increase it even further, make it capable of more? And I think that's mainly my read, right, on what is the future. It's not to bring those things in, it's to know about them, so that whenever you have a problem that could be leveraging one of those things, right, how can we bring that in?
Great, thanks for sharing, Andrew. We have another question here from Galadriel. How can teams prioritize and manage the customer experience in their day-to-day operations?
I'll hit on this one first, and then Mariangela, I think you'll probably have some insights maybe at the end upon how to actually execute and not just brainstorm on priorities to it. But the key, I think, comes in the way that you're organized. There's a lot around being empowered and making sure that you understand which piece of that customer experience you have, what portion of your product yields upon that customer experience. So in the e-commerce space, we think of, okay, the product is, or the experience and the product is somebody buying something. Very simple, right? Well, if you think about it, not so much. There is the aspect of, if we start in the beginning, getting the person to that landing page. And there's an experience and a product and an offering to that. There is, once that person is on that initial landing page, if you're working in a global company, color scheme is important. The way the content's formatted is important. Obviously, language is important. All of that adaptability to fit, that's its own experience and its own product. Money gets lost every single day in the e-commerce world in a shopping cart. So then I find something, I leave it in the shopping cart. I don't buy, I don't do that initial nudge. That is a product and an experience in itself. And then the fulfillment centers that then get and pay and then get it fulfilled all across the globe is its own. So it is the question that's asked there is complicated in the fact that it is multifaceted in those experiences. But for a team to be able to understand their piece and the connectivity that they have with other pieces, when they see something poor, they could understand, can I empower it locally? Do I need to coordinate, and who do I need to coordinate it with to execute upon it? Mariangela, I think back to your example, but I don't know if you have anything else to add there I think back exactly to your example, and that's the piece that we need to be empowered, but understand the ecosystem.
Yeah, I think I would take to a different vision. So how can we implement these changes in different teams? So as you mentioned, we would have to look at the value flow of this, for example, the funnel of since the search until the cart, and check everything that is being, let's say, not going until the end, and get all these customer feedbacks and get all this customer insights from each leak. And this is one of the ways to look at it. And another way is to look at the teams that are really building those applications, and make sure that everyone is together in defining the strategy and defining the priorities, that everybody from the same flow is on the same page. Because if you have one team, like in the beginning of the flow, having one priority, and the other ones from the rest of the flow don't have the same priority, it doesn't make any sense, and you are not going to get any advantage of your implementations and of your let's say your customer experience improvements, or any kind of improvements on your product. So you need to have all the teams engaged on the same strategies.
Yep, couldn't said better.
Thank you, Dan and Mariangela. We have another question here. How to handle conflicts or misalignment between teams, especially when they have different priorities or goals?
I can start with that. I don't think I will say anything new from what I've said before, but I think the first step is to put everybody on the same room, if it's virtual or physical, whatever, but everybody needs to be in the same room and plan what they're going to do, at least for the next quarter, and say, okay, we need to do this strategy, this implementation. So I need the other teams on the flow to do the same and to help me on that. If they don't have enough resources, or they don't have enough budget or whatever to do, the company has to say in a higher level what they want to do from those choices, what is more important for the company. And sometimes it has to go top down. So the company has to say what gives more revenue, or gives more process improvements, or whatever, what is the benefits that they need, and go top down to the teams and say, okay, this is more important than the other initiative that you have, and so you would have to do that first. So it's not just a team objective, it's a company wider objective.
I think also when you're looking at internal conflict, you're looking at conflict between teams from a managerial perspective, there's two key components. To me, it's competency and context. So the first piece of it is, in that conflict that's arising, or in that conflict that you're trying to mitigate, does everyone there have the competency to be successful in their role, and understand the competency that the other roles have to be successful in their roles? That then creates a level of interaction that you can have. Then the next is context around what are the priorities that we were speaking about? What is the technology stack that we're using? What's our strategy towards it? Where's our customer going at it? So I think the use of understanding the competency that you and your peers have, and management to give that context, allows a lot of that conflict to be self-resolved, and allows organizations just to deliver better value at the end.
That's our main goal, right?
Yeah, that's what we hope for.
That's what we hope for. Well, we're set from the questions. If you don't have any further comments, we can go to the ending. Thanks for joining us today, everyone. We hope you found this webinar insightful and the discussions valuable. Please stay connected for us. with us for more updates, upcoming events, and additional resources by following our social media channels and subscribing to our newsletter. If you have any further questions you wanted to make to our hosts, you can send to us. Please feel free to reach out. And have a great day, and we look forward to seeing you at our future webinars. Until next time.